Welcome to this one-to-one, and my special guest is former Celtic goalkeeper Jonathan Gould. Gouldy, absolutely magnificent to see you. The years have been kind to you, I have to say.
Both of us, haven't
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Taking you back in your career,
Yeah.
how did that move to Celtic come about?
I've always called it a Star Trek moment. It's one of those you're in the holodeck and something happens that you don't expect to happen. And I think I was third choice at Bradford at the time, and I had a phone call in the morning from and I'll go agent loosely, and he said, "Oh, Celtic are looking for a goalkeeper." And he said, "You fancy it?" I said, "Well, yeah, third choice at Bradford to Celtic, I do." I put the phone down and I picked my phone up and rang my dad and said, "Dad, do you know anybody at Celtic just to follow this up?" And he knew Jock Brown at the time, gave Jock a call. And then the next thing I knew, I was running around the training field with one of them Sony Mars bars, and it rang, and it was Jock Brown. He said, his first word was, "Do you think you could play an Old Firm game?" And I said, "Absolutely." And within a couple of hours, I was in my Fiat Punto driving up to Parkhead.
I mean, that is it's a Star Trek moment and a half. But did you know that you were going up there as number one, or did you have any assurances?
Nothing at all. I think there was Stewie Kerr was there, Gordon Marshall. I just knew they needed one for the European deadline, and that was the rush around the signature. And obviously I met Murdo and Vim, and first training session was with Pete Latchford, and within I think a week or so I'd played against Roma, which you go from Bradford to playing against Roma. That was incredible, a change of fortune.
Tell me about the club. What did you know about it? I mean, it's a double-barreled one here, because what did you know about it, and what did you know about that special year that you were joining this club, because this was huge.
Yeah, I knew what a massive club it was, and I think that's one of my lasting visions, driving towards the ground when this stadium appears out of nowhere, and you're waiting for your phone to ring you up and say, "No, it was just a joke." So I think I knew very little at that time about the situation in respect of 10 in a row. But when you then got inside the club, it was pretty obvious what an important season it was going to be.
Tell me about the players that you played with, the team that you joined. Did you know any of them?
I knew them. They didn't know who I was. I walked into a dressing room full of big characters, actually. And that was the other thing that sort of impressed on me. I remember meeting Tommy Boyd, and he took me around the dressing room, and every single player, they wished you good luck. I'd never experienced that at any football club before. And I think, you had a feeling straight away that they were a strong-minded group. And there was no hiding place in the first week or so. You got to learn about some of the characters, and we talk about football banter and some of the things that go on, and it was pretty obvious that you weren't going to escape anything in respect to your personality, in respect of your ability. You had to perform first and foremost.
I know about your personality. You're a very engaging person, and one of those guys that I think would find it easy to slip in and be a great teammate. But tell me about your mindset, because if they're strong-minded and they know about their abilities, you're coming from third choice at Bradford. Did you have the mental strength, or did you need somebody to keep reminding you, listen, stop worrying about whether you deserve to be here or not?
No, I think your first training session becomes really important, and I think I remember going into that first training session, and I consider myself technically a capable goalkeeper, and I'd also played in the Premier League prior to coming to Celtic. I played 27 games for Coventry, so I wasn't. Although I had come from obscurity as to where I was at that moment in time, my past showed that I had the ability probably to cut it at this level. Whether I could cope with the demands of a massive football club like Celtic, that was my test, really.
Okay, I've talked about your mental state, about you and your ability to handle being the number one. What about the mental state of that team? Tell me about the feeling, because the fans, the only thing that mattered was stop 10 in a row. You're up against a Rangers side that's just been on an unbelievable run of success.
Yeah, and you looked at their team and they were full of superstars. Laudrup, Gascoigne, Amoruso, Neg, all those. They were a fantastic team. But if you remember, I can remember we got off to a terrible start that season. The first game I wasn't actually involved in. The first one was away at Hibs, where we got beat 2-1, and I think it was Chick Charnley buried one in the bottom corner.
Yeah.
And then we came. My first league game I think was at home to Dunfermline.
Lost 2-1.
And we lose 2-1.
They were calling for the manager's head
exactly,
after that game.
And I also think I remember seeing a headline that I think it said something to the effect that this would have been the first time in a long time in the club's history they'd have lost the first 3 games, opening games of the season. So there was no pressure even at that point.
What was the dressing room like?
It was nervous. But you could, I think in that week as well, we'd signed Henrik. We'd got Reggie Blinker in. We all knew that Paul Lambert was probably coming in. So you could see that the manager was starting to look at the quality of players that were coming into the group.
Who were you closest to?
Right from the start. Goodness me, that's a really good question. That I was probably closest to Pete Lashford, my goalkeeping coach, because he was because he'd played so many games for the club and knew what it was about. Some of the information or the guidance that he imparted, even 3 or 4 minutes before a game, he knew how a game was going to pan out even before it started because of that experience. And I think it was really important that I was close to him, in that first month or so.
Did you sense, you mentioned the players that Wim wanted to bring in, did you sense that Wim had the character to guide you through this season? What did you make of him?
He was silently strong is probably the best way I could put Wim. He's when I look back now as a coach, I can now see why he did what he did in training sessions. There'd be times where he'd play the first 11 against 7, which would wind the 7 up because they knew they weren't playing. But he knew there'd be space on the football field. There was other times he'd bring it in. There was other times even in training, and we didn't find this out till afterwards, after he'd left, that he would deliberately be winding us up with referees' decisions because he knew they were going to come in certain environments we were playing in.
And when you look at the team that he was starting to build, did you sense there was a genius in there?
There was somebody in there that had played in World Cup finals. And I don't think you can have much better in that respect of dealing with the pressure. And I think you might also remember we had early on we had a meeting around the shape of the team, and we had our views and Wim had his. And I'm pretty sure when we walked out the room we thought we'd won, but he knew he had because we still played the same way. And it wasn't about how we were playing. We just didn't feel our setup was right at the time.
Yeah. Did the guys know about? Obviously Wim had an association with Henrik, but did they know that he was going to be, did they sense from training that he was going to be as prolific?
Yeah, you knew straight away.
Yeah?
Yeah, you can see it in players, how good they are and their work ethic as well. And people that see Henrik will see all his goals, but one of the things that we revered him for was the amount of work that he did off the ball to help us get it back. And, you see the great Liverpool teams and you even see Man City now, and they all work as a unit. And to have someone like him with that ethic up front and to be able to provide us with the goals was always going to be a big thing for us.
Yeah. One of the things that a lot of players mentioned to me, spoke to the likes of Darren Jackson as well, Simon Donnelly, all these people mentioned and reiterated what you highlighted there. He had a settled 11, and you had to work really hard to try and break in and even get number 11 shirt on your back at times.
Yeah. And that was hard for some of the players, but I think, go back to the group, they knew that, so they respected the 11 that were playing, but they were determined, and training therefore was at a really high tempo. We had other little things. You've got Darren here, and he went through something that none of us would really want to go through in respect of his brain injury, and I think that also helped sort of gel the team. That there were 7 or 8 players in that group that were really, really strong in the environment.
There's one specific game in that season that sticks in my mind, and I think it was a turning point, not just for the team, you might correct me, but for the fans' belief. It's the 2nd of January 1998. The left-hand stand isn't built yet. This is still Fergus's dream and the 5-year plan. But it was a night when suddenly Celtic finally defeated Rangers in a game that people started to think, oh, wait a minute, they're serious.
Yeah. Yeah, it was an amazing night. That was that's the Lambo goal, isn't it? As well, yeah. You can still see him wheeling away. Yeah, yeah. That was a big moment for us as a group. You know, previously with the CIS Cup win, I think was made us believe as a group we could be winners. But I think that Old Firm game, there was a lot of talk about you know, how many we'd won and you're at home and you knew how important it was, and that just, I think that gave us a little bit of an edge just before we went into January. It was an amazing night, and the goal that clinched it was phenomenal.
Have you ever witnessed a noise like it? I mean, it's a long time. I've witnessed many an Old Firm game, and I've witnessed many special games, but that one in particular, I just thought there was a feeling in the press box that night that the guard was changing.
Yeah, that's really interesting, that, because you know, when I look back, you knew it was important, but you probably didn't realise how important it was.
Moving on, you've mentioned, you know, the CIS Cup win over Dundee United, which was crucial. That gives you that bit of belief, but you're getting closer and closer. You've got a game where I think in that particular season, Stubbsy scores a late equaliser against Rangers. Rangers manage a good 2-0 win, and suddenly people are thinking, are you actually going to go over the line? Did the nerves creep in again towards the end?
I think they did. I think it was at the top end of the field they just slightly crept in. I remember I think it might have been Hibs at home, we drew 0-0, and we probably shouldn't have done. And then you even went to the last but one game.
Craig Falconbridge, do you remember his name?
Off his ear.
Should you have got it, Gouldy?
I didn't even try, so...
It was the most obscure header, wasn't it?
I'd probably get blamed for it by some managers, but no, at the time, you know, I remember the ball coming over. And I also remember Vim, and you can see him on the video now, watch the game back sometimes, and you see Vim pushing the boys out, get out, and whether I hadn't pushed them out deep enough, but it was a fluke goal, really.
Yeah, and but again, at 1-1 away at East End Park, suddenly people are thinking, Celtic might blow this. You've got St Johnstone, last game of the season. I'm sure if I said to you in the August of 1997, I'll give you St Johnstone, last game of the season to win the title, to stop 10 in a row, you'd have bitten my arm off.
We'd have, you know, with respect, we'd have taken it at that time. But I can remember the feeling on the coach on the way back from Dunfermline, and we wanted, obviously, to party that night, and yeah, it wasn't quite the case.
Yeah. Tell me about the build-up to that St Johnstone game.
No, I watched the game now, and I don't know if you've seen it. And there was one video that they've done. It was from, I don't know who did it, but it was more about the atmosphere and around the supporters. It was a fantastic video. It is of the day, and I just remember nerves. I can remember coming in at half time, and we were 1-0 up. I think I'd had a dodgy moment at the back post. I managed to get a hand on it, and I just knew as an individual I really got to get my concentration right here, because
you must have been glad George O'Boyle didn't have his shooting boots on that day. Do you remember?
No, he didn't. and that season I'd come across him a couple of times and managed to keep him out, but you know, George was always going to be a threat, and there was one that skimmed off the top of his head. But at 1-0 at half time, I just remember putting a cold wet towel over my head and thinking, don't worry about anything else that's going on, just keep your mind right, because there was a massive 45 minutes in front.
Do you remember anything that Vim said to you guys?
No.
All a blur?
All a blur.
Yeah, I'll tell you the one thing that it's a strange thing, and he's probably one of the nicest guys I've ever met, Harold Bratback. The enigma that was Harold Bratback, because I always thought Harold was absolutely fantastically talented if you were putting the ball beyond him. Not with the ball and he's got his back to goal. He was one of those guys who ran behind defences and pushed a high line. And the only thing I can see is him moving like a locomotive as Tom Boyd's going down the right-hand side.
Harold would probably be more suited to the style of play played today, just for that reason. One striker on his own, you've got two wide men, and exactly as you say, playing it in behind, because he was lightning. And the finish, you know, the finish was exceptional. It was a great ball in. You remember, I think, was it Boydie and Jackie? They were just steaming down that side, and that was the moment I think we all knew we'd clinched it.
Are you an emotional person? Did you sense that day that it's almost like a bloodletting exercise of, all the tension of that whole season?
No, it was relief, that one.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's funny because there were other titles and cups that we won afterwards that I think were jubilation. I think that was relief because of how much the pressure had stacked up, even from the previous week. I mean, the week leading into the St Johnstone game, you could tell we were feeling it as a group. We all went out. I think it was the Amber Regent we went to and had a real good night. But I think that the next 2 days after that, when we came into train, we'd sort of let the Sunday go. But to let that Sunday go, we had to go out as a group. It wasn't usually well advised before such a big game, but it was the right thing.
Yeah. Was your family there on the day?
Yeah, they're all there.
Yeah,
they were all there. I think it's like, it's talking to you now. It shows how important it was at that time.
Yeah, I can remember being a reporter at STV, going around the pitch, and as everybody's going around interviewing everybody, and there was that tremendous sense of, as you say, relief around everybody.
Yeah, it was, and I can see, goodness me, God rest his soul, Phil O'Donnell and all the kids were down there, and Vim and Murdo and his family, and it was a pretty unique day, I think, in the club's history.
If you can't remember half time, can you remember the celebrations afterwards?
Nope. We got whisked off to, as you know, to Portugal anyway.
Yeah.
Which, that leaves a bit of a sad taste because we didn't get a chance to enjoy it, and then there was everything that happened with Vim's departure, and that was sad.
If that year's special, and I think you will forever be remembered in Celtic fans' hearts for that year, when you look over your entire career, I mean, you've got a couple of Premiership medals thrown in there. I think, am I right in thinking you've got 3 League Cup medals? Yeah. And you would have got a Scottish Cup medal, I think, as well, being in that squad.
Yeah, I got a Scottish Cup in the treble.
Yeah.
So I think I played in a couple of finals that we lost.
Did you get a sense of, in the treble season, I know there was 2 different goalkeepers, yourself and Rab, who shared the responsibility. Did Martin make you feel really part of that?
Martin he's probably one of the most amazing managers in respect of the management of people that I've ever come across, and most people will tell you that. And that's coming from someone who knew from a pretty early outset that he was going to replace me.
Yeah.
Had
he said that to you?
Well, I think leading into that pre-season, I played a couple of games. Stuart played a couple of games. There was all sorts of rumours going on that we were signing goalkeepers. I think Martin had met Bosnich. You can't hide at a club like Celtic that there's going to be interest in really top quality players. But then he gave me my chance at the start of the season, and we were unbeaten in the league. And I think it was probably what hurt me was a performance in Helsinki. Although we went through in the tie, didn't play that particularly well, I don't think, on the night. And he realised he needed to bolster the goalkeeping ranks. He knew he had an experienced one in myself, but I think he wanted something else, and that was obviously Rab.
Yeah, and the crucial 13 games I think that you played in that league, that in the end, got you a medal, but you were part of a team, I think, in a squad that will be forever remembered. Trebles are hard to come by, although
doing it pretty easy at the minute.
This lot at the moment obviously make it look as if it's a walk in the park, but at that time, many a good manager had failed to deliver a treble. Yeah,
and you think back to that year, and the synonymous moment was the 6-2.
Yeah,
the supporters believed after that result. I think we knew we had a good manager. He then brought in, I think it was 20 million quid's worth of players, and you think how long ago that was. We don't do that now at Celtic.
Yeah.
And you think of the likes of big Chris Sutton and Lenny, and Didier Gat was another one, a bit of a steal, but there was a real good core group that he brought in. I think what he did, he replaced what we probably lost when Vim left. We had 2 years where I don't think the players that came in were of the same sort of character, and I'm talking about winners.
Yeah, and Sutton, he really struggled to settle into an Old Firm game. I think it took him 60 seconds.
I'm pretty sure he was offside, wasn't he? I'm glad it wasn't given.
Yeah. Have you ever? Is that one of the maddest games you've ever been involved in?
Crazy game. But and I can remember the sixth going in, and I think and the Rangers fans, obviously they were allowed in the stadium at that point, and running around like a headless chicken in front of them and giving them a little bit, but it was worth it.
Yeah, you talk about the strength of the '98 side.
Yeah. For
me, the 2001 side had guys that you would take into the trenches who would fight till the death.
All day. You know, even the big Belgium, Jos Verhaeren, really quiet, but you knew he was on your side. You know, Johan Mjauby. There were some big characters there.
Do you look back with great fondness at that period? Is it something that, I mean, your dad, can look back in his career with great credit. Do the two of you ever sit down and go, wow, how special was that for me, Dad?
We probably should do more often. Football, even though in it as I am at the minute, it means you don't get that sort of time. But there's always at the back of your mind. See when you win something, the best time of the year is when you go away on holiday and you can then settle back and you go, wow, achieved something this year.
Yeah. And
then very, very quickly the fixtures come out and you look at it and go, right, what can we achieve this year? I want to win again this year. And that's what this club taught me, really what it was all about. When you go back down, when I went back down south as a player for Preston, you win 2 games and it's almost as if it's all right to lose the third. Well, it's not here.
Just before we finish, is there a particular moment, a story, something that happened that sticks in your mind that was just mad and summed up the whole time at Celtic? Is there something that sticks out? Is it a player? Is it the antics of someone?
No, it's probably a meeting I had with Martin O'Neill, and it really, it was when I knew that the change was coming. They'd signed Rab, and Martin took me in his office and he said, "Look, I've signed Big Rab." He said, "Rab's going to play this week," and I said, "Yeah, I feel that coming." He says, "Look, I want you to know I think you're a really good lad." He says, "I see the benefit of you in our change room, the experience you've got and all that sort of stuff." He said, "But I've got to let you know," he says, your goalkeeping really does give me the heebie-jeebies." And I sort of looked at him, at that point he just offered me a 3.5-year contract. And I went, well, I think I can take that to stay at a club like this. So,
the amount of players in that team is saying a wonderful way of making you feel okay by hooking you.
Bang.
Not bad for having the heebie-jeebies because you got the extended contract.
And I think that was the big thing about what Martin brought to the football club, was that it was bigger than the 11. And it was bigger than him, and it's bigger than anybody really. But if you wanted to be part of it, and you love the football club, there were still opportunities.
And the final question to you is, what does it mean to be etched in Celtic's history and be such a crucial part of it that Celtic fans look back on with great fondness?
Just pride. It's pride and privilege. I've always used that word, a privilege to play for a football club of this size and the foundations of charity that it was built on. I'm not just saying that because it's true. And the passion as well that you get from the supporters. It's huge.
Jonathan Gould, it's been a joy.
Thank you very much.